Hello and welcome back to part 2 of my 3-part video series where I talk about basically how to repair your pool pump. Where we left off in part 1 is we actually removed the physical pool pump motor and housing itself away from the rest of the system. What I've got here is we got the same thing that we saw in video 1. I've removed it, just got to set down on the ground, and we're ready to begin essentially taking this thing apart. So now, when you want to take the thing apart, the first thing you'll see here is the diffuser plate along here with the diffuser O-ring. And what I've got here, you see we have these 1, 2, 3, we got 5 screws on it. What we're going to want to do is we're going to remove these 5 screws in order to take the diffuser off. So what I've got here is I've just got a 6.5mm socket, and that should be enough to start loosening these things up. And just for your own sake of knowledge, I've actually looked up the prices of these individual components. And so say yours is cracked and you want to replace it. For this particular model, this diffuser plate is actually anywhere I've seen the cheapest about $14 all the way up to $30. So that should give you an idea if you've got a cracked one of how much it would cost you to buy a new one. And believe it or not, this little bitty O-ring itself actually costs anywhere from $2 to $7 I saw online. So, all right. So I'll show you the back end. So before you want to continue, you do want to clean out any debris. It looks like I've just got a little bit of perhaps dog hair, whatever stuff that's been inside. You want to make sure that, like I said, nothing's really, inspect it really for cracks. Make sure nothing's really sticking out. It looks like, other than, like I said, the rust around the screws here. Nothing really sticks out to me that I need to spend $14, $15 to get new. This is your impeller. This impeller right here, it actually spins with the shaft. So to remove it, you actually want to spin it counterclockwise. However, you can't get it off right unless you've got, because the shaft's spinning as well. So in order to actually get this impeller off, we're going to have to secure the shaft. Therefore, we can actually twist this without twisting the shaft and remove it. So in order to do that, let me flip this thing around. Go back to the electrical housing. So one thing you're going to notice is this right here is the capacitor switch, capacitor start switch. So the actual product manual says that if you stick a wrench underneath here on this shaft, you should be able to secure it properly without having to remove anything. There's just not enough room, and these wires are pretty solid after being outdoors and exposed to the weather for so long, that what I've actually found is more useful is to remove this capacitor switch here. So there's a little screw here in the middle, takes a little flathead screwdriver, and I'm just gonna remove that. Now, you want to be careful with this thing. This little starter switch itself is not very common to find, and it's actually, I priced it, it's anywhere from $27 to $37. So I've just removed it. Now, there's 2 little wires that come on here in these contacts, and they're actually attached to the capacitor. And so what we're going to want to do is we're going to remove these and just set them to the side. Mine are a little tough to get off here, but just pull them off with your fingers. There's one. Get this one off here. So you'll see here we got these 2 contacts. They tie into the capacitor here, and we're just going to remove the starter switch. Now I do want to tell you, I had actually broken this in the past, and had a called the pool pump whisperer. He had actually told me, if you rub your finger across the contacts, you see that black mess on your fingers. That's actually a good sign that your bearings are about to be shot. So now we have an open area right here for the shaft. So if you notice, as I turn that impeller, that shaft is moving. So what you actually want to do is you want to take a 7/16 wrench. You want to get in here such that you can twist it enough to where you get it on there. So now that you've got on there, secured, I should be able. All right. So now I've got the impeller off, and what you want to do is really inspect this, clean out any debris. If you're not seeing any flow, this is always the first place most people look, is the impeller. And this thing, just so you know, this will actually cost anywhere from $33 to $60 online. So next thing I need to do, there's no need for me to secure the shaft seal anymore, but however I'm just going to leave that there because I'm going to take this seal plate off next. So what I need next is I've just got a 14mm socket. If I turn this around, so you can see for the shaft seal, there are these 4 big bolts here, and I'm just going to start removing them. And we can take this seal plate off. Now this seal plate's pretty expensive in itself. It's actually anywhere from $70 to $115. So you can see stuff starts adding up pretty quick on these individual parts. So if I want to start basically piecing this together with all brand new parts, it just almost makes it worth it buying a whole new one altogether. Alright, so now taking the seal plate off. Now you would need to take this off if you were going to replace your shaft seal. So what you would do is you would take a little flathead screwdriver, just hit it on the back of the handle there with a hammer, pop that thing out, and you'd be able to replace it. Now the shaft seal, which is this part as well as this part that goes on the impeller, these two together actually cost about $20. I found off of some pool supplier off eBay. That, for all of you just doing regular maintenance on your pump, that's really where you need to stop. Just replace what you need to replace and start putting everything back together. However, like I said, I'm going to start going even further into this. So to continue on, it's important for me to say that this motor right here is actually manufactured not by sta-rite, but it's actually manufactured by a company called A.O. Smith. Now this is important because A.O. Smith is pretty much the primary supplier of motors from what I've seen for a lot of pool pumps out there. So this motor is actually commonly used from Pentair and a lot of other brands, and so it's the AE100ELL motor. And I'll post some compatible pool pumps out there for you all, so you guys can actually look and determine which ones are, you know, if any of those other pool pumps may apply, because this should be able to be, the stuff that I'm going to continue on with here should be pretty useful for people just without even a sta-rite. A.O. Smith does a really good job. They have a motor mastery PDF document online that actually walks you from this point forward. And so I'm going to just try to follow it step by step and see what I can do. However, one last thing, you will see there's a little rubber washer here on the shaft. Believe it or not, that's actually, they've called it a water slinger. So this little water slinger here is anywhere from $1 to $9 online. So, but most importantly here, this motor A100ELL is actually, I've priced this anywhere from $155 to $250 online. So I actually got a quote for a pool store to actually come in and replace the bearings for me. They gave me a quote of $149. As you can see, for $155 I can just buy a whole new unit altogether. So it's worth my while to actually at least try to take it apart myself and see if I, with a couple of like $6 bearings, be able to fix the problem. If not, I can just go out for $155 and buy a whole new unit altogether. So to continue forward, we're now going to get back to the back here. So this portion right here is called the governor. This governor right here, it's the same as that little, in terms of pricing, it's pretty similar to this little starter switch. And I've seen it anywhere from about $37 to $27 to about $40 worth. So according to the A.O. Mastery School document, and I'll post a link to that online for everyone to have it, we're going to have to start removing this governor first. And it says the first thing that we're going to need to do is we're going to need to remove these springs. Alright, and so with a screwdriver and a little bit of trickiness, we finally got the springs off the governor. There should be 2 of them. I'll just set those aside. There are actually 3 pieces, 3 parts to the governor. The springs, then there's a weight, and then there's a bracket. So the next thing we need to get off, you see here, is this little weight portion right here. And just want to note the orientation this is in, because this little part right here is where the starter switch will have to come into contact whenever you reinstall it. So in order to do this, we just need to take a screwdriver, kind of separate the bracket a little bit. Alright, so that was a little tricky as well. You just had to pry hard enough, pry them apart hard enough in order to finally pull that weight off. Just set the weight alongside the springs. And then last but not least, we've got the bracket of the governor. We've got to take off of that one screw out. So once again, I'll probably just secure the shaft here, keep that thing from turning. Get my 7/16. Take a flat head. Alright. So we now have that apart, and the end of our, now we can start seeing where the end of the shaft is at. So the next part is, let me see if I can pull one up for you. There are actually four bolts that run along the entire length of this casing. You can kind of see one inside here, and they're tiny. And actually the same socket, the 6.5 millimeter that I used, I think even a 1/4 inch, that I used for the diffuser bolts, you can use on these too. Now I'll be honest with you, I tried to loosen these up prior to beginning this taping set. The reality is these 4 bolts have been the biggest pain in the ass for the entire, for what I've been able to film so far. Two of the bolts actually broke a half into threading inside. One, the head basically snapped off entirely, and then one just wouldn't even turn, actually just basically got stripped by my ratchet. So just so anyone doing this, basically for part 3 of this series, I will have had to have found 4 new bolts, and I should be able to give you information on how much those cost to replace. Alright, so now I should be able to, so this one I already loosened up, and I'll just go ahead and pull it out and just show you. So you can see these bolts are pretty long. You can also see how this one broke at the threading down below. So once I finally get this casing open, I'll have to, I guess, basically get the remainder out, and like I said, find replacements for these 4 bolts. Hopefully these should be able to be pretty easily findable in some random hardware store. So at this point, we should be able to start separating both ends of this shaft here, so we can get access into the actual motor and the bearings. However, in order to do this beforehand, what we should do, you should actually take a piece of tape and mark both halves such that you'll get it the right way orientation when you reinstall it. So this is something on the A.O. Smith manuals that they recommend you do. Probably because you got vents on half the things, and they want to make sure you probably get them in the right spots. Chances are the engineers designed that for a reason, so they probably want you to make sure you get it the way they intended. So I'll just take a piece of tape, mark both halves, just make sure you know that they'll line up when you take it apart. Next, what I have here is the old rubber mallet. Supposedly now that the 4 bolts have been removed, I should be able to take a screwdriver of some sorts, bang on this thing until this front end here pops out. Hopefully there won't be too much headache doing this. I'm not even seeing any separation from these 2 units. Let me see if I can try the other end. So you can see it's kind of popping up. Starting to separate there. That's good. Alright, so this took a lot to get loose. I do want to clarify, obviously, this is the first time doing this, and what I have to work on is not by years of experience, but by the A.O. Smith Mastery PDF document that I was going to post on the video. So one big lesson learned that I want to pass on is I was able to get this one off first, as you just saw, and frankly it wasn't really necessary. From what I've seen, there's really no point even removing this this portion. The next lesson learned on this was I beat this shaft pretty hard trying to get this thing to come off, and I couldn't even get it to budge for a long period of time. And you saw my method of holding between my legs and beating was all I had, but really the best progress I finally was able to make on this was taking this rubber mallet and just kind of like slightly beating around all four corners of this. And by doing that, I was finally to see kind of a separation here, and then finally I could pull this thing apart. So we're ready to do so. And I do want to point out that when I was doing that, another piece, this piece to be exact, I don't know if it once used to be rubber or what, it's pretty hard as a rock. It actually came off here, and so that was after the water slinger. There's a lot of little pieces from this point forward, and so we got to be careful to make sure you remember where they go. So as I continue pulling apart now, this is what I'm left with. So let me put this aside. So most importantly here, as you can see, I've got one of the two bearings that I'm going to need to be replacing, and then the other one is actually inside here. The problem I have is, one, I think what's going to be the death of me are these four bolts. So these are the bolts that broke off, and I'm going to have to get those. I'm going to have to spend a lot of time getting those out of there. First thing we're going to do is go ahead and remove this bearing. So behind this bearing is a little snap ring. I don't know if you can see it. There's a little snap ring here. And so all I'm going to do is I'm just going to... Alright. So that came off right there, and that's what that looks like. And there's going to be, I imagine there's going to be another one of these on the other bearing as well. And then, in order to pull this bearing, this was with the help of a friend, I was able to find this little 3-inch gear puller. I got this from Northern Industrial for $10. Hopefully it'll work out. So what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to position this on this unit. And then what I'll do, get it tight with my hand here. I'm using a 9/16 inch socket on for this tool. Alrighty. So that was easy. So here we go. We got the bearing, and then once again we got this little, looks like a little plastic washer that came on. So I'll just throw that in the trash order. Just kidding. Keep that with the snap ring, and I'm going to keep this aside because this will let me probably take this to my local tool store to see if I can find a replacement. So now we got one of the two bearings off. We're halfway there of all this. So, like I said, next thing we need to do is I got to find a way to get that screw loose. Alright, now before we start trying to remove the second bearing, I do want to take note that this actually came off the back end, and it just kind of rested on the back end of the bearing there. And what this is, it looks like it's pretty mangled. At least that was my first thought. However, according to like the A.O. Smith PDF document, it looks like it's supposed to look like this. So I'm actually going to assume all is well. And we'll show in video 3 kind of where this goes a little bit, just to provide you with a little bit more clarity. But just note this is one of the many pieces that tend to come off when you pull this thing out, when you pull the shaft out. The other thing is we know we had the water slinger, and we also had this other rubber washer come out. Now underneath this was a third washer, this little tiny one. So just note that it looks like there are about 3 washers total, one after another on this shaft. Now, I spent some time into the night here, and according to the A.O. Smith, I should just be able just to get this little screwdriver to turn about half a turn. Unfortunately, I got no love, even with my man WD here. And really what there is on the back end of this, there's a lock nut. And this lock nut just needs to turn about half a turn. in order to basically unlock the bearings so you can pull this thing off. Like I said, I was having no love, even being able to get the screwdriver to turn. It seems like I was doing more damage than good. What I ended up doing last night was being able to just, with a rubber mallet and a screwdriver, pry this lock nut off. I'll probably have to buy another replacement one of these. And then finally, I was trying to get this, you'd think this would be able to slide off then, and even then that was the case. There was just so much rust built up. What I ended up having to do was just hold this and then beat this top of the rubber mallet here, and then finally this back end popped off. Alright, so we're finally ready to remove this last bearing. I had already taken a screwdriver, and on the bottom side of this bearing there's a other snap ring. So I removed that, just pried it off with a flathead. And then last but not least, I was actually in the process of getting this pulled off, and I wasn't getting it to budge. I thought it was a rust issue, and I was kind of halfway right. On top of here, on top of this bearing, there's actually another snap ring. It was actually completely rusted, and what I had to do was just basically break it so I could take it. This should be almost a full complete circle that fits perfectly around the shaft. Add this to my list of things to find replacements for. So now what we can do, take my trusty tool, and hopefully this thing will finally start coming off. Alright, so I'd say if any of my bearings were bad, this would be a prime cause. So, and then last but not least, this probably get cleaned off. This is the nasty version of the little plastic, pretty paper thin washer. And looks like there's no more pieces coming off. So I'll clean that up, and that concludes my video for part 2. I just want to touch on, before I end this thing, that one of the things I kept hearing was that this was a pretty labor-intensive process. As you can saw, I think if I had this thing brand new out of the shop and had to use some type of similar replacement, I don't think it would be that bad. What has made this so labor-intensive, and will probably be labor-intensive until I can get it fixed, basically all the rusted bolts and components that I'm going to have to find because I had to break them in the process of getting them off. If it weren't for those, I think this would be pretty relatively easy. As it is, this is probably more normal the process. You're going to have to, you're not going to replace a new one. You're probably going to do it after it's been weathered in the outdoors for 2 or 3 years. So we'll see how it goes. Tune in to video 3, and what we're going to do is I'll replace the bearings and kind of show you some snapshots as we put things back together all the way up to hooking it back up and hoping that everything works a lot better. Or else you'll just see me just taking a sledgehammer to my system. So I appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next video.
So this is hell. What else could it